stream, just starting to stream my thoughts, and maybe just give it 1 minute. Have you got it?
I press the live.
If you're ready, when you're ready to go live, it will go live on YouTube then. Hello, and welcome to today's Wildlife Wednesday. Sorry about the delay in setting up. We've managed to get there, so I'm looking forward to welcoming you to today's first Wildlife Wednesday with the Africa Hub. This is a new initiative for us, so essentially it's in combination with our usual destination training. I am absolutely delighted to welcome Trish to the stage. Trish is a very experienced guide and TV presenter who will be going through the Big Five with us today. As mentioned in my emails, please do WhatsApp me if you have any questions for Trish, which we'll address at the end. And I look forward to seeing what Trish has got on store for us. So, Trish, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to say that this is such a wonderful initiative because you want to know about the countries, you want to know what your customers can see, but you also you're really interested about the animals too. There's some really cool things that go on here in Africa. So I'm so happy to share all of that with you. Just a little bit about myself. So as Sam said, I am a wildlife TV presenter. I've been doing that for the last 4 years or so. Before that, I was a research scientist, and my academic expertise is in environmental sciences and biological sciences. So that's what I am. I love animals. I love to talk about them, and I definitely love to share my knowledge about them. And today we're going to be focusing on the Big Five. So before we get into some of the extraordinary clips that we've managed to get on Africam's cameras, let's talk a little bit about what this term Big Five means. So essentially, the Big Five are, as is generally understood, our lions, our African elephants, which is distinguished from the bush elephant. So it's the African lion, African elephant, African leopard, and then we have our buffaloes, African buffalo, yet again, and our rhinos. And when we talk about the Big Five, it's actually just the white rhino that's part of the Big Five, not the black rhino. Anyway, we'll get further into that as we go through our clips. And the term Big Five in itself was a term that was basically coined by hunters. It symbolized the most difficult animals to hunt on foot. And they certainly are very, very difficult to hunt on foot, as you would imagine. And there's been lots of deaths, even up until now, human deaths that are a result of either people trying to hunt or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, and buffalo is at the top of that list when it comes to animals within the Big Five that are very, very difficult to hunt because you are likely to die within the process. So it's a term that we try to steer away from, especially recently, because it is a hunting term. But it doesn't mean it's wrong or anything like that. I think it's just important to understand how it originated. Anyway, I think that it would be awesome if we could start with the biggest of the Big Five, which also happens to be one of my favorites. Every time I say favorites, I just have to stop myself because I love them all. One of my favorites. Let's start with the biggest of the Big Five. A gorgeous Ellie. So although we can't actually see the parts of him that would tell us that he is a male, because if you are going to go to Africa and see, or come to Africa rather, and see these animals, you'll find that males are very, very easily told apart from females. Apart from their size, they have a very obvious fifth leg. At the moment, he seems quite unexcited, but you can see that he's playing with the cam. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and you'll actually hear the cam spinning. So I can tell that this is a male because of the size of his head. It's quite large. Oh, there we go. It's quite large. The forehead is rounded and he's got a very nice hourglass shape. If you look at the distance between the eyes and then the distance between the trunk and then the middle distance there, you can see it's got this nice, the distance between the tusks. He's got a nice hourglass shape. And that will tell me that he's a mature bull. That is very curious. This is so fun. Not just for us to watch, but also for the, oh, look at that. That was a great shot of the end of the trunk where there are obviously the nostrils, because essentially what the trunk is the upper lip, and it's basically that. That's just grown, right? So it's a combination of the upper lip and the nose. So what we saw there were two nostrils, and we also got a really good look at the fine hairs that are at the end of that trunk. And that helps very much with being able to feel well, because hairs like whiskers there, and Kirsty's going to show it to us again, those hairs are very sensitive, much like whiskers. Such an awkward look. So there you see the paws, right? And that's where the hair is coming out. So one of the differences, while there are large differences between an African and an Asian elephant, an obvious one is the end of the trunk. So we can't see it too well here, but African elephants have two finger-like protrusions. That's what we call them. And that makes it quite easy for them to pick or to spin a camera. So it looks like this, and it can grab with those two protrusions. And that makes they can handle things very delicately with their trunk. And their trunk is also very, very strong. And it has over, depending on the definition of a muscle, so it can be a muscle group. If we're talking muscle groups, they have about 50,000 muscles. If we're talking individual muscles, then we're talking about 150,000 muscles. So there's a lot of control and strength in that trunk. Sorry, just to complete a thought earlier, before I went to the trunk, I was saying that the two finger-like protrusions is something that's obvious in an African elephant. In an Asian elephant, there's only one. So they don't grasp like that. Instead, they kind of roll something into that area where they can grab it with the end of their trunk. Every time I do something like this, it always surprises me how much I have to say. But we do have another elephant clip, so I can keep on talking about one of my faves. But this one is I mean, I don't know if it could be cuter than spinning around our camera, but it is. And we can even continue talking about the trunk. So elephants love water. Water is very important to them. They drink many, many liters in a day. Oh, so this baby that's on the under mum there, it's a young male, as you can see. So this little bull hasn't quite gotten the hang of using his trunk just yet, as you can see from the various splashes all over the face. Oh, there we have a good look at those two finger-like protrusions of the mother. So there we go. Oh, baby elephants are great at face planting. It's one of their talents. You can see very clearly that he has really not mastered the use of his trunk. So what he'll actually end up doing is drinking with his mouth instead. I know this may seem obvious, but a lot of the time people think that an elephant drinks through its trunk. But as I explained earlier, the trunk is essentially the upper lip and the nose fused, so they can't drink through it. But what they can do is suck up water into the trunk and then empty it into their mouth. Wow, this little baby's just having the time of his life. Well, at least it looks that way, but I can imagine it's actually quite frustrating. Too sweet. And for me, whenever I go, when I'm guiding, these are the best sightings. Because young elephants, young ones like that, maybe under 3 years old, this one's quite young. This one's it's about 1 year old. You can see it can still pass through mum. So if the baby can still pass underneath mum, this is a perfect example, then it's under a year old. So between this age and about 3 or 5, they can be very entertaining, and they can even interact with you in a way that's very special. They'll come right up to the vehicle. They'll even try to touch you, but they're so cautious in their curiosity that they sometimes will put their trunk right up to my face like this with an open end and just kind of looks like they're looking at me with a periscope, but the periscope is their trunk. And they do this, but they will never touch, because obviously they're very cautious as well. And if you make a movement during that time, because sometimes it can become uncomfortable and you don't want to put you or your guests in a potentially dangerous situation, so I'll just knock on the side of the vehicle and all the bravado is out the window. These little ones just scatter, some trip. So it can be very, very entertaining, and that's why they end up being some of my favorite sightings. That being said, they also are very curious, as you saw even with that adult, with that older bull. They can be very curious and can sometimes get into camps. So it's an important thing to remember to maybe even tell your clients or your guests that all of these animals are wonderful to watch, but they can also always, any animal can be potentially dangerous. And elephants particularly have a reputation for getting into camps. And you will never ever want to put yourself in a situation where it's you and an elephant, about to collide. Bad idea. In fact, recently there's even been some incidences where guides have had to do stuff like that and then have ended up dying. But when you do it safely and you have a reputable guide in a good area, like so where I've guided a lot and have had these interactions with elephants is in the Sabi Sands. So that's in Mpumalanga, Limpopo in South Africa. So that's on the eastern side of South Africa, just a little bit further north, and like north of Johannesburg. And those elephants are very, very, very calm, very relaxed. If you go to other areas, say you go to the Kruger, you may not get elephants that have the same attitude. So it's important to decide, if your clients say want to see elephants, which reserves are a good space for them to do that. Anyway, we'll now move on to the next one of the big 5, and that is the African buffalo. Also looking exceptionally cute, I must say. So this is a lovely herd that's just enjoying the water. And with these large animals, water is very important. Oh, look at that. Water is super important because they are so large. And if animals are large, it means that their surface area to volume ratio means that they will keep a lot more heat within their bodies. So the amount of volume in them is higher than the amount of surface that they have in order to dissipate heat. So if you're after buffalo, rhino, elephants, these are all, large animals, a water hole is a good place to find them because they're often cooling off and they often need to drink. Now this little calf is getting a nice lick from mum. Very, very sweet. It looks very tiny. So cute. I have something to admit though. It took me a long time to appreciate buffalo sightings. Because, they just appear in a herd and they kind of just stare at you like you owe them money. And that's exactly, I know you think I'm just being funny, but that is exactly the stare that they give you. Because they don't have many defenses, right? So buffalo, when, say, a lion is going to hunt them, running away is not their strong suit, So it's either they stand their ground and wait for the lion to approach, or until there's a small enough distance between them and a lion for them to use their horns. So they've really, really got that stare down. This little one doesn't have it down yet, though. It looks very tiny. Wow, that was lovely. And buffalo, they move in these great big herds. And it is incredible to watch them come through in hundreds and hundreds, like thousands of buffalo. You'll see them come through. You'll see the dust as they move through. And remember, these animals don't have territories. So they'll be moving through vast areas, vast spaces with this dust cloud following them. And they're just everywhere. You see one and then suddenly they're all just emerging. And I was lucky that in the Sabi Sands we do get to see the big five. So we see buffalo come through in these droves, and it really is, it's a wonderful sighting. But like I said, it takes a while to appreciate just sitting calmly in a herd of buffalo. But now moving on from buffalo, we're going to talk a little bit about their predators, the ones that get them the most, and those are lions. But we'll start off with the cute lions. We saw some baby elephants, baby buffalo getting a good lick, and here we have some lovely babies. Oh, look at these cubs. Oh, I hope you saw that interaction. That cub approached a lioness, which is obviously not its mother, and the lioness growled at it, and the cub growled back and walked away. They have great attitudes. So unfortunately, you can see, well, not unfortunately, it just is the way of life. They're predators and they are prey, and these ones have gotten a buffalo. And that's what we saw in the distance there. And these cubs have obviously gotten hold of a bit of meat. You can actually tell if you look at the head of the cubs, you can see it's quite spotty. And then also if you look on the underside, well, you can't see it here in the infrared light, but they would also be quite spotty. And it takes them a while for that spottiness to leave them. So there we go. Look at the back legs of this cub. You can see some patchiness. Oh, look at this. As I'm sure you know, lions are incredibly social cats. And that's interesting because no other cat has the same kind of social bond, in a way, family bond or otherwise. And it starts from a young age. You can see those cubs were having a good go at each other, and they're playing essentially. But after they try to eat all that meat, which they don't look like they're the age in which they could actually consume the meat properly, they've got to have some milk to supplement their diet. That's very cute. Lion cubs are exceptionally cute. I always think if it's, I mean, we always, guides, we do silly things. We're always like, oh, what do you think is cuter, a leopard cub or a lion cub? And obviously, it's difficult to choose that. You can never choose it. But lion cubs are exceptionally cute. And they'll only start eating meat with the purpose of nutrition when they're about 2 to 3 months old. Even then, it'll be little bits at a time because they're still being supplemented by milk, and they'll be weaned by the time they're about 3 to 6 months. So they have a very short period in which they're consuming milk. I say short because it's short comparative to other animals. So like another predator, for example, a hyena does have an exceptionally long period of where they still feed their cubs milk, and that's about 15 months, 12 to 15 months. But you can see that with a lion, that's significantly shorter. So it means that very quickly they've got to learn to eat meat within that about 2 to 3 month range. But these ones look a little bit smaller. And especially since they went for the milk quite quickly, straight after the meet. Well, we had a look at the smaller ones, and now let's have a look at the adults in action. What a wonderful scene, just in general, because we have a whole lot of game there at the beginning. Look at this lion. So she is using this termite mound as cover. And also look at how well her tone, that fawn color, how well it blends in with the dryness of the grass around this time. We've got some elephants drinking towards the left of your screen. We've got a Nyala bull who's just on the other side of this dam from the elephants. Oh, there we go, there we go. Oh. Maybe others come as well. Oh. And that's exactly how it happens. That's exactly how it happens. It happens quickly when the commitment is made. The actual time of coming together to decide whether this is a feasible hunt, and they'll often be around the dam or the animal that they want to hunt, that can take some time. But when it's decided that this is happening, it happens so fast. And they got a female Nyala, it looked like. I imagine you might find it odd that there was little to no reaction to what had happened from the other animals. You can see that the elephant's still there. They did lift up their heads. So when elephants lift up their heads, and their trunk kind of falls like a waterfall, like up and then down, it means that they've seen something, they're aware of something. But if it doesn't affect directly, the animals are not going to scatter or react terribly to what has happened. Wow, that was quite something. I didn't realize when I watched it the first time how quickly that had happened. I think this time I was focusing on the other game that was around, and I wanted to point out what a beautiful setting that was. If you have guests and they have a sighting like that, that is phenomenal, because you have your elephants, you have your lions, you have your Nyala, and then on top of that you're getting a hunt. So there we go. Look at that. So you can see there's the male Nyalas, 1, 2 on the right hand side of the dam, and then number 3 on the left hand side of the dam, and then there's one female. You can see she looks quite different, or 2 females actually. One was hidden by the elephant. There we go. It looks so peaceful, but of course that's the opportunity that the lion needs in order to hunt. And when we talk about the way in which lions hunt, or anything hunts, and especially if we have a clip like this and we're watching it with our capabilities, right? With our sight capabilities. So that means that we can see, we have primary cones and we have rods in our eyes. These are the cells that are sensitive to different colors, or different light wavelengths, and that allows us to see in the colors that we see now. But for example, the Nyala would not have red color cones. So what that means is that you might often hear that animals, and while this is true that they don't have all 3 color cones like us, and they have 2, you might hear that they see in grayscale. That's not exactly true. They see in more of like a washed out color scale. But if you ever get the opportunity to maybe go online and have a look, there have been cameras in which they have taken out the red sensitivity wavelength, so you could kind of see what these animals would see. And if you look at a tiger or a lion that's in the grass, you cannot tell that they're there. It's quite amazing. And that's why a lot of these animals, these prey animals, are depending upon the other senses, not so much their sight, but their smell, sense of smell, their hearing, the fact that they most often are in herds or small groups, which means there are more eyes, more ears. So there's a lot going on. There's just so much going on. I'm never going to be able to tell you all of this in, a couple minutes. So let us move on to an animal that I'm very privileged to have spent a lot of time with, and most other people in the world find it very difficult to find them because they're so elusive. The leopard, the African leopard. So this one has got a kill in a tree, probably an impala, I would think. Looks like an impala. Isn't it just stunning? I know we're seeing it through the cams, but if you get the opportunity to come here and to see them in real life, you will truly, quite unfortunately, it's very saddening, but you will truly see what the appeal for lots of people are to poach them, because they look so beautiful, and that coat is so stunning that you can see why people would want to do that. Well, the type of people that would want to do that. They're absolutely beautiful. So judging by the back end of this leopard, we can tell it's a male if you look under his tail. And so what he's doing, he's not actually, doesn't look, he looks like he's seen hyenas. But it's a combination, that kind of growl, or the lifting of the upper lip there, is a combination of probably seeing hyenas and the fact that he's got a whole lot of fur in his mouth. So leopards will pluck, look at that. You can just imagine what he's doing. I bet you could do it with your own mouth. He's trying to get all that fur out. So he's plucking before he eats. Now, animals that even have the strongest gastric juices are unable to digest keratinous material. So anything that has keratin, that means hair, nails, hooves. While they can get softened, they're not did completely. And so the leopards have evolved to rather reduce the discomfort by plucking their prey. Look at that face. Before consuming it. So this might be a good time to have a look at so along his nose, where his whiskers originate, you can see that there's lines of spots. I think first of all, there we go. So you can see his nose, you can see his mouth, and you can see on either side of them, there's lines of spots. So if we look at the topmost line, what a face. So the topmost line, there are often spots above that line, and that's how we identify individuals. So this individual doesn't really have a name, but he's called the 1-1. And that's because on either side of his, didn't realize you could see me again. So there's the topmost spots in the line that the whiskers are originating from, and then above it, there is a collection of more spots. That usually ranges from 5 to 1. So this animal, this particular individual, has a 1-1. That's one thing that we use to identify leopards. There are tons more that you can use to identify leopards. This is just a starting point. So the first thing you say is, okay, it's a female or it's a male, and it's a 1-1, or maybe it's a 3-3, which seems to be quite common. 3-3, that is, or 5-5, at least where I guided. Anyway, I think, okay, let's just have a look quickly at one last leopard clip, because it's something extraordinary that your guests would be very lucky to see. So this is that same male. If you have a look at his cheek there, or if you want to, or just like, next to his nose, you can see the one spot that I'm talking about, the lone spot. He has the same on the other side. So predators are often territorial. And in order to be territorial, you need to be able to protect and mark that territory. Let others know this is yours. And different predators have different ways of doing that. But vocalizations is an important way to do that. Oh, isn't that amazing? So that is called a saw. So leopards don't roar, leopards saw. And it's called a saw because if you imagine you have one of those hand saws, and it's you and your mate on one side, and you're pulling and cutting down a log, it goes goo 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 goo. It's very bad. I'm not very good at sawing, but that's my best impression that you're going to get today. So when that happens, say right next to your vehicle, and you do get some cats that are very comfortable with that, it just, the sound is so multi-dimensional. It's so full. And the same goes for a lion's roar, that it is really, and for an elephant trumpeting or rumbling, because they can vocalize in an infrasonic manner. It's a feeling. There's a feeling associated. And when I mean a feeling, I don't mean emotional. I mean that there is an actual feeling associated, as in movement associated with the sound, it's amazing. Anyway, so we've covered 4 of our big 5. We've spoken about buffalo, elephant, lion, leopard, and there's one more, and you guessed it. It is the rhino. And as we start talking about the rhino, let me say to you that there are 2 types of rhino that we get here in South Africa, and that's the white rhino and the black rhino. The black rhino is obviously, there are very few individuals that are left in Africa, let alone South Africa. I'm not sure so this here is a black rhino. Let's start with the black rhino. So let me actually, before we even get into it, just tell you that in a lot of reserves, including where I've worked as a presenter, we don't show rhinos. That's because obviously there's a lot of poaching happening, and so we want to keep them as safe as possible. And so we don't often take footage of rhinos. So that's why we can start off with a picture, just so we can show some differences and similarities. Sometimes it can be confusing. What's the difference really? One's not black and the other's not white, but we'll talk about it. And then we'll show you a little clip from a rhino orphanage. So let's go back to the black rhino photo. So this is a black rhino. Looks very much like what you may generically just say is a rhino. But if you look at its mouth, doesn't it look super peaceful? I think it does. If you look at its mouth, its upper lip is pointed. I would say it's pointed. And that's because they browse. So what that means is that they eat leaves of shrubs and little trees. They may take grass too, but they mostly browse. And you can see that they're a little bit, well, you won't know that they're a little bit smaller, but they are a little bit smaller than a white rhino. And you can see that there isn't a difference in color. They're just normal, shall we say, rhino color. And then if we move on to a white rhino, you might think, well, it looks just like the black rhino, but this would be an important distinction. Okay, so you can see already it's bulkier, right? You can also see that the first horn, the longest horn, has a thicker base, and the black rhino has has a thinner base at the longest horn. But the most important thing to tell them apart is if you look at the mouth of the white rhino, can you see that it's wide? It's rectangular. And that's how they're able to graze as opposed to browse. So they're eating more grass, which means that their mouths have evolved to suit that diet, or the other way around. And so when you think about white and black rhino, you might think, why are we using these terms? The way that it originated is not, it's kind of a myth, the way that it's originated. It could have been this, it could have been that, but the most prevalent story is that people were saying wide, as in wide mouth rhino, and then that became interpreted as white. And so then the one that didn't have the wide mouth was considered the black rhino. So that's essentially their differences. And like I said, while we may see them, especially white rhinos, populations are doing pretty well. And so while we might see them when we're out in safari, we don't broadcast them very often. And speaking about poaching, for example, it's still incredibly prevalent in South Africa and African countries in general. It's really a severe problem, but we do have very well trained, very brave anti-poaching units that do their best to patrol, and some areas even have an individual team member that is connected to a single rhino. So one individual team member is responsible for that individual rhino, and they will follow them around the reserve. So a lot is being done to make sure that we're able to protect our iconic species, one of our big five. Anyway, I hope we have a very cute clip for you from the Rhino Orphanage. Oh, isn't this lovely? So this is a rhino orphanage. So it means that these rhinos are protected. Everybody knows that they are there. But if this was in the wild, we wouldn't show it, because inevitably you don't know who you're giving clues to about the whereabouts of rhinos. And this cam is at Care for Wild. Anyway, I hope that you learned something. There's just so much to say about all these animals, in terms of my experience with them, my biological knowledge of them, ecological knowledge of them. Everything is so intimately intertwined that it's difficult to know where to start sometimes. So I hope that you did learn something, and I will hand us over to Sam again, and hopefully you've got some nice questions. Or maybe I was so great I answered all your questions already.
Thank you so much, Trish. I think just seeing those visuals, what's been able to be caught on camera is just phenomenal. And learning all those useful facts. I think, as you say, there's so much to learn about the Big Five, but understanding the history behind the name, I think, is really important, because it does get confusing with people not knowing, what's included in the Big Five and why they're the Big Five. So knowing that, they were the dangerous guys to hunt on foot back in the day, changes how we view them today from a photographic perspective. Personally, I love buffalo. I think they don't get enough look in. I think that their faces are hilarious, and getting that shot of them as you're talking about with that stare really is just a classic African shot. But yes, and also great that we were able to get some footage of the rhinos. Totally understand, showcasing where they are, they're just going to be looked at in terms of
Yeah.
people who are keen to hurt them. So great to have you with us and go through all those wonderful things with us. I'm just going to open up the floor to anybody who does have any questions. I don't know if we've had anyone come through so far, but from my own perspective, I think I saw leopards in Botswana a couple of months ago, and for me, I think what's really fascinating is how they take their prey up into the tree rather than having it down on the ground, and being solo cats versus lions who've got their pride around them to support them. For me, I feel like that's such a distinct difference, and actually seeing that hunt during the day for the lions is phenomenal, because people always think that they're going to see that hunt at night, or when you go on safari and your clients are out on safari, they might talk about having seen the lions on a kill, but seeing an actual hunt live during the day is just staggering. So we were really lucky to capture that content on those cameras.
Yeah, it is. These cameras catch some insane content, and that's what if you sit in one spot the whole day in a park, you're gonna see some crazy things, and that's what the cam is. You're sitting in one spot for a long time, you're gonna pick up some great things, and it has.
Brilliant.
I just had a crazy cat story.
Wildlife.
I was saying to Sam that I'm actually in my hometown at the moment, and we get tons of vervet monkeys. And so when the cat sounds like that, it's usually because there's a monkey around. So maybe you'll get some live wildlife while you're with me.
Oh, a question has come in actually, which is great. How big can elephant herds get?
Ooh, so that's an interesting question. Let's start off by saying there's no definite number.
Okay.
An elephant herd is matriarchal. So it'll be the mother, the grandmother, daughters, granddaughters, and the males disperse. So the only males that you will find within a herd are those males that are still juveniles or adolescents. And then slowly around the age of maybe 12 to 15, sometimes even earlier if they're badly behaved, the mother will start to push them out. So if we're talking just herds that are of these familial matriarchal lines, then I've seen herds of at most maybe 50. I've not seen bigger herds than that, but I do know that they exist. Because also, once a herd gets very large, they will break apart. But they're still in a similar area. And so they'll often might meet again. And then you get the 50 and the 50, and it becomes 100 herd for that day because they happen to be browsing in the same location. But the more common size that I see is between 20 and 30.
Okay, brilliant. And that one question has spurred off some more. Would you mind recovering again the difference between male and female elephants?
Sure. So
Yeah,
male, I
besides the
mean,
obvious.
okay. I was like, how do I say this again? Okay, so so besides the obvious, male elephants of the same age, so a 30-year-old female elephant and a 30-year-old male elephant, the male will be larger. The other difference, which is only really apparent once they're maybe over 15 years old, is that the female has more of a angular forehead, while the male will have a more rounded forehead. And the male tends to have like their heads tend to get quite big and heavy. And the distance so I was looking earlier at the distance between the eyes and the distance between the trunks. So if you just imagine for a moment that I'm an elephant, the larger and older bull that I am, the thinner the space between my eyes and my tusks get. So it creates a really nice hourglass shape between the tusks and the eyes. The best way to tell, like with any animal, is to just look between the legs. It's the easiest and most definitive.
Brilliant. Okay, great. And then there's a question about lions. Someone has said that there are occasions where prides have got more than one male that looks old enough to be fairly dominant. Is that a usual thing, or will there only be one dominant male in a pride?
So a lion pride consists of females and their offspring. And then you get a male coalition. So you can have several, just bear with me. There can be several prides within an area, each with their own territory. But the territory of the male coalition is larger, so it encompasses a number of prides. So, for example, in my experience, I've had one male coalition, and the coalition consists of 3 fully grown males who are, there's little dominance between them. And then these 3 males will service all 3 of the females, the prides that are within their territory. Some may have a better relationship with this pride over that pride, but essentially all those males will be welcome at any of those prides because that is the coalition which dominates them. So back to specifically the question, it is possible to have more than one dominant male in a pride because that's not their only pride and they're part of a coalition. Sometimes you'll see one, maybe you'll see all 3, at the same pride. But the important thing is that prides are separate from coalitions and their territories overlap.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Wow, that's so interesting. I did not know that. Okay, great. And then
it sounds so simple, but then that's why I was like, bear with me. It's not as simple.
No, that's really, really helpful. There's a question about the leopard population in the Sabi Sands. Now, I know that you have quite a lot of experience working in the Sabi Sands. Is there, well, first of all, how big is the territory of a leopard in general? And second of all, why is the Sabi Sands so well known for leopard populations? If you can answer that.
Okay, I can speculate. So let's start with leopard populations. It's different in different areas. So the largest, leopard territories. The largest territories are, so again, like with the lions, males have larger territories than females because the males want to be able to encompass as many females as possible within their territory, right? So the same is for leopards. So large male leopard territories can be as much as 100 kilometers squared, but can also be as little as 20 kilometers squared. Female territories are smaller, and they're on average probably between 20 or less, essentially. There's some females that I know who have territories that are about 10 kilometers squared. And the size of the territory depends on prey availability and water availability, essentially resources. So if your territory is small, it would mean that you have encompassed a lot of resources within that territory. Everything is stuck. Okay, we're back.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and the second part of the question, why is it? It's hard to describe why it's the Sabi Sands. It could just be, one of those things. It happens to be a nice area for leopards. It's bushy. It's dense. There's water compared to other places, and I think mostly it would be the density of the bushes, which means that there's sufficient cover. And also the amount of drainage lines. There's a lot of drainage lines. And the abundance of prey. I think that's it, yeah. But there might be some magic, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they're sort of just I guess they're protected as well, aren't they? Great.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got any more questions coming through. But I think, yeah, just to reiterate, thank you so much again for your time. And a huge thank you to Africam for helping us to host our Wildlife Wednesdays. Our next one, we're just working out the schedule because there is quite a lot in the diary coming up. But a huge thank you. And for those of you who are with us today and are really interested in watching more live footage from these cameras across Africa, mostly southern, mostly South Africa. But there are some phenomenal videos that you can catch up on Africam's website. There is an ads premium that you can get for $5. Just put in Africa Hub. I will email you this detail. But I'm a member myself, and I can honestly say just having Africam in the background while you're working is so lovely. It's so inspiring, and you might just be lucky enough to see a kill. So I do encourage you to support the Africam and the work that they're doing, because there are also additional eyes on the ground to make sure that these animals are safe. So once again, a huge thank you to you, Trish. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. The recording is going to be put onto the Africa Hub website for members to watch after the fact, and we look forward to seeing you at our next show. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.